Right, reaching you from our headquarters in Lagos, Nigeria. If you just joined us, this is Enterprise a Morning from Enterprise Television. Let's go to our conversation for today. The Nigerian government has announced a new policy banning students under 18 years of age from taking the senior school certificate examinations, notably the West African Senior School Certificate Examination and the National Examination Council NECO exams.
Very true. Education Minister Professor Tahir Mamman argued that the policy was not new but an already existing rule. Even so, this is one policy that has already led to division within the academic community.
First is the Nigerian Union of Teachers, which has condemned the policy. The union says it is unrealistic and does not consider exceptional students who may be academically advanced.
Moving on, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has supported the policy, stating that students should follow the standard academic progression and not rush to enter university at a young age. But the policy continues to spark controversy, with some arguing that it would lead to legal challenges.
Very true. So that's all we have for today. And we have virtually joining us Hassan Soweto. He is the National Coordinator, Education Rights Campaign. Good morning, Hassan.
Good morning.
And also,
good morning, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so very much for your time. And also we have John Akerele, a public affairs commentator. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much for your time also. And still with us in the studios is Cyril Abaku. Thank you, Cyril, for hanging on.
Thank you, Cyril.
All right, so quickly, let's kick off of this. It's now no longer news that the federal government has come up to say that Nigerian students who wish to get into our universities, of course, must be under the age of 18 and above to do that. I'd love to start with you, Hassan Soweto. What's your take on that?
Well, thank you for the question. I think, to be honest, that it's diversionary, the kind of conversation we are having right now. With regards to the age qualification for admission into universities. And why I say it's diversionary is because I think that there are much more pressing issues concerning public education that a minister ought to be concerned about rather than a question of age. And that's because it's not exactly very fundamental. I talking to you, gain admission 23 years ago into the university at the age of 16. And I can tell you for free today that I did not see how in any way that age, affected my life progress or my academic, progress within the university. And that's to show really that while there is some sense in the argument that standard for education as laid down in the law should be followed, it is not exactly so fundamental, but there are always going to be exceptional students, brilliant students, and those who would necessarily not have to comply with that. But again, there's also the question of how do you implement a policy like this? And it seems to me that the government is starting from the wrong place. Because the foundation is where this problem starts from. If you don't enforce, the age at which young people, children actually enter the public education system, then there is no way you are going to control what age they graduate from secondary school and they want to apply for it. And then there's also the question, of the rampant culture of double and triple promotions, which is very rampant in private schools today, private primary schools, private secondary schools. Which also means that at some point, even when a pupil, start at the right age, start primary school at the right age, then by the time they have a couple of double promotion because they're exceptionally brilliant, then they can graduate at a very, very young age. And then, they have to, apply for admission. And at that point, they then want them to then stay at home. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, what would happen even to those children today who have to waste the next 1 year or 2 years of their life, just because a minister says that they are not qualified to enter the university. That is one of them. That is an important thing. There is also the very key issue of whether or not this age of qualification for admission, whether 18, which in Nigeria's law is considered as the age of adulthood, is relevant anymore, given the current situation across in most parts of the world. The age of adulthood is sometimes as low as 16, as low as 15. And that is taken into cognizance, the developments in human development, the human psychology, the growth of children and all of that, which clearly shows that children nowadays reach adulthood at an earlier age than was the case in the past. So I think that these are some of the multiple issues that really needs to be looked at by stakeholders before the government begins to enforce a policy that is going to have very debilitating impact. When I say debilitating impact, I'm talking of those thousands of young people today who are 17.5 years old, 16 years old, 15 years old, who have done nothing wrong, who have been exceptionally good, whose academic record has been flawless over the past few years. But the government is saying that even though they passed the JAM and SSC, they have to wait for the next 1 or 2 years. What is going to happen to those? So,
thank you, Soweto.
I think that what we should be demanding for now is there's a need for a stakeholder support before this kind of policy is enforced.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Soweto.
All possible parts can be discussed.
Okay, thank you. Now over to you, Akerele. It is believed, because a lot of Nigerians are beginning to perceive our leaders as making policies that are favorable to them alone and leaving most citizens or the next generation handicapped. Now, if we should actually be truthful, most of the leaders actually making these policies, their children would never study in our Nigerian universities because they have the luxury to actually send the children abroad or give them a better education. And at this point, what do you perceive of our leaders? Are we going to say they're considerate, or they're actually trying to help the younger generations get into school at the appropriate age?
Thank you very much. Good morning to viewers all over the world, and good morning to Nigeria.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
We can hear
You
you.
just took the words out of my mouth. You took the words out of my mouth. And the question I would like to ask the policymakers is, what led to the evolution and the advancement of private institutions when it comes to our education? Have you ever heard of a double promotion in a public primary school before now? The answer is no. And then that is a two-sided conversation. One side, the government have intentionally destroyed our system of education and have given an enabling environment to private institutions. And so we have thousands of private entities called schools who have enacted double promotion based on their perceived or their perception about the kids that they have. Now, that shows you clearly the lackadaisical attitude and the failure of government when it comes to educational settings in our country called Nigeria. Now, that being said, are they brilliant kids? Yes. We also ask yourself a question that there's no children or no student from the public or the private school that ever repeat a class. Have you ever seen that you pay about 2 million naira per annum on a child and then they write to you? I don't know if I say that you have to repeat primary 2. You as a parent, you will know your child from that school. So it means that when the government failed in its responsibility, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can come into this space and make government of their own. And so, the second question I needed to ask yourself is, and I've been an advocate of this issue, that every public servant must use public institutions, including our schools. I put it to you, all of our political class, including political appointees, do not have their children studied in Nigeria. Even the so-called minister who is bringing up this policy does not have his or her children in a public university in Nigeria. And the question I want to ask you is this, because I was a victim of this, so, like a attitude of the government. They said to you, you must be 18 years old before you get to university. In the university, you have to spend 4 years. 4 years turns to 8 years. 8 years plus 18, you are 26. 27, you are going to set. That's if you are mobilized on time. 28, you are done. And then you are going to look for a job, and the requirement age is 26 years, which means that the government has created a system to destroy you as a person even before graduating. And so this system is not working. The second thing again is that the curriculum is a problem. We are still in that era where we say, oh, brilliant students should go to science class. I don't know if you are a science student, but I can see you in the studio. You guys are so brilliant, which means that brilliancy is not specified to a region or a section of education. As a matter of fact, everybody is brilliant in their own way because we are all learners and we learn through different means. Some of us are auditory learners, some of us are visual learners, some of us are. So we will not judge your intellectual capacity based on how fast you can speak. Even though you are quiet, that doesn't mean you're brilliant. And so it means that everybody needs to come to a round table. The government needs to understand that they are very people in terms of policy making, and that the policy that they are even formulating is not for the people. And if we must go to a place where things will work, if you come to a country like Japan, at 22 years old, you're already a graduate, according to the system of education. By 22 years, you're a graduate. And so if they tell you that your age of requirement is 24 and you need 2 years of experience, you can get that job easily. Why? Because the system that the government puts in place can already mold you, and then by 18, 22, you are out of the university. In our own case, reverse is the case. And so the government needs to look at it and say, can we as a government take ownership of our educational system, look at our curriculum, and look at how we can fine-tune it into the present day reality? Now people are talking about AI. That is never in the curriculum of Nigerian primary, secondary, or universities. Even till now, people are talking about machine learning. We are talking about banking and finance. We are still way backward. So it shows that in terms of government attitude, we are failed. In terms of curriculum and the division of our curriculum, we are not there. In terms of policy making, we are not there. And so everybody needs to come to this drawing board and say, is examination a true test of knowledge? The answer is no. You can be a very brilliant student, and when it comes to examination, you can fail the exam. Does that mean you're not brilliant? The answer is no. And so all of us need to come to that table where government officers need to show that their political will to make proper reforms in terms of our curriculum and also in terms of age. What age do you want to have the graduates in Nigeria? Don't also forget the issue of ASU strike. And also, I think at this point, the government needs to come to a point to have a body that regulates all of our educational system, from the federal to the state and to the local government. That's how it works in Africa and the world. Now, we shouldn't have a case where you have NUT, you have TUC, you have ASU, you have... No. There are too many, duplication of responsibilities. And so, government should come to a drawing board, bring all stakeholders to a conversation, and then let's have a unity system that controls our educational system from primary education all through to the university. And so that when policy comes in, there's no conflicting interest between ASU and NUT, because NUT will say to you that we are national union of teachers. ASU will say to you, we control the university. And so this back and forth is something that the government needs to come in and put the record straight.
Thank you.
Very, very true. And Cyril, just before I come to you, let me just get to Hassan for a bit. Let's get into science now, because it is a proven fact when it is scientific. A publication that was done by a child psychologist, did say that rushing through childhood. When you rush children through childhood, it increases the amount of stress hormone in the child's body that ends up affecting them as they grow up. For ASU to come in tandem with the federal government, they are the ones in the front line. They see some of these things. They understand how that when young children get into school early, they are usually at the disadvantage of course cultism and so on and so forth. Now, don't you think that is a good cause, when people in the front line like ASU are equally coming to collaborate with the federal government in this cause?
Well, let me start with a clarification because I know ASU very well. My organization, the Education Right Campaign, we have been in solidarity with ASU for decades now. So in a way, you can say that we know how ASU works. I think the statement credited to the ASU president, Professor Sodeke, can be taken as more or less a condition, a preliminary, response to the development. He himself noted very clearly that that was his personal opinion, and that the union was yet, to discuss and have a position. And why I'm saying this, therefore, is that knowing ASU very well, ASU is not likely going to just support a policy without having a rounded out analysis of it in terms of all of its broad implications. And that's why, for me, my first response to it when I spoke earlier is to say that yes, it's correct, to say that we should have an enforcement on the standard of education. But then there's also the need to now look at how that enforcement will be done and what are the likely impact, on the students. And also, this policy that the minister is implementing, like he said, it's been there. It's not a new policy. It's been there since the 1970s. Why has it not been enforced? And why are you enforcing it now in the 21st century? Could it be that the metrics, that was considered in the 80s or 70s when this policy was, brought up, have changed? So that the question of, even the scientific category of childhood, when it starts, when it ends, has it not changed? The scientific category of adulthood, when it starts, when it ends, has it not changed? What is adolescence now? Adolescence now, or teenage years now, was not the same thing as it was in the 70s. Puberty and all of that, they are no more the same thing. So in that sense, I think that the conversation we should be having is that the minister cannot just wake up one day and pick up a policy that's been in existence for decades, for like 40 years, and then begins to implement it in a new situation. There's a need for a proper discussion, a proper assessment by stakeholders, including child psychologists and all of that, to say that, how do we ensure that we have proper regulation? And I think that my colleague, actually made a very important point. That part of the problem we have today in the legal sector is the distortion created, by the prevalence of private education, which means that there's certain things that goes on that they are not, in tandem with the standards of education. So, for instance, therefore, if you want to then enforce this kind of policy, it means that you need to start from the foundation and say that for the primary school, we want to ensure that all pupils, actually finish all of the years, that is, prescribed for the different stages of education. If you don't do that in that way, and you just come to the point where students want to enter the university and you say you must be of a certain age, then you're actually creating more problems. But what that means, therefore, is that you are stopping people from actually advancing in their education when they have done nothing wrong except to be exceptionally brilliant. And when, they feel qualified to do so. So I think that we need this kind of a robust discussion.
Thank you,
What
Soweto.
I'm calling for, what my organization has called at this stage, is a national summit, where groups like all ASU and Co will bring position papers on these issues. We also go to child psychologists, bring position papers, so that at the end of the day, the outcome that will come out will be something that is very fulsome and very comprehensive.
Thank you, Soweto. Okay, now over to you, Cyril Abako. We've seen how this general world we are now used to in Nigeria today have actually existed, and that is football age. That is one thing. That's where I'm driving to now. Now, looking at this football age where some talented footballers want to actually get into the football academy or get into some clubs, but because of their age, that they'll be denied this privilege, and they had to now influence their age. And looking into Nigeria, looking at the employment world, where they tell you, oh, you need 5-10 years experience, and Nigerians or students that go through school experience the ASU strike, and by the time they're coming out of school, they're 30 and they don't have the experience. Don't you think this would actually have a strong effect on the way people now tend to falsify their age just to fit into some particular
in society?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand your concern, and I think I'm in full alignment with what my co-panelists, especially what Soweto was talking about, the need for a national summit, for a conversation,
Mm.
where we must sit down and talk about first, why should we go to school?
Mm.
What do we need it for in Nigeria?
Sure.
One, what do we want to achieve with it? And how then do we use education as a launch pad for producing the people? Because now the idea of the 6334
Mm.
or even the 936 we're using is that in the end you'd have spent roughly 12 years before you want to get admission to university. And if the university enrollment age will be 18, it means you won't have been anything less than 6 before you enter primary school.
Mm.
If at the age of 6, maybe you are helping your father to carry firewood from the house to the market or to the bush or to the farm, with the current economy we have in Nigeria today, by the time you have become a farmhand, I'm not, some parents will not be too eager and willing to let you go and go to school. After school, you still come and suffer. They won't do that. The second challenge is that if you left secondary school at 16 and you have to spend 2 long years at home doing nothing before you enter university, why won't you as well become a wife, become a trader, or veer into something that won't give you the room to continue your education? You know what I think? I agree with the NUT. If we wanted to adopt a policy like this, then we need to go from the bottom top. I don't know what made the minister just wake up and go and pick one isolated issue. Why invest enrollment age is not the biggest problem that we have in Nigeria. I don't know why he woke up and went and picked it. This policy is not new. It has been there a long time. I think should have just kept quiet and focused on how Nigerian education can now begin to produce geniuses. Okay? And use that as a threat to say, if you're that good, there's a place you belong in. But apart from that, this is the normal thing government wants to be doing. But again, we also, because I mean, in the literature, we found out now that the sentiment or the idea that enrollment age should be 18 is not universally scientific. It's not particularly, it's not. So we need to ask, so where does Nigeria stand? When was the last time we did a survey of Nigerian students to know the capacity of a Nigerian child? And may I even say this, the way they learn is one of the big schools, right? Where parents have to pay in millions. And the way education is channeled in some of the public institutions cannot be compared. They are not the same. We should even have this Ivy League system. Okay? Well, and for me, it will not be discrimination where we can say that if a child's trajectory or progress can be measured in a certain dimension, that child can have concession. There's nothing wrong with it. It is privilege. Yes, it's privilege. But you've not undertaken any procedure to come at a policy in 2024. You went and picked what they were practicing and just came and said, as from now, this is what did the minister the power to say that this year they should do 16 and then from next year 18? What gave the power to say that? If the policy is 18, policy is policy. What gave the power? Because it was the uproar in the room. So what gave the power to say, okay, this because they are shouting, so next year they should shout again. They should shout again and say, no, then okay, let's do it next year. Maybe that's what to change. That's what to make him to see reason. But as far as I'm concerned, this 16 dichotomy does not stand because the consequence of it will be you can't go to school until you're 6. Alright? And even if you made it at 16, you still can't go to university until you're 18. By the time you turn 6, as I said earlier, you would have become a farm hand or a market hand. You would have been able to go to market. Then, as for talking about when you're 16, but girls in the north are married at the age of 15.
Yeah.
Why are we not stopping them?
I was about asking that.
Why?
What is the future of Nigeria at this
Exactly.
point?
So the discussion is not about school enrollment age. It's first about, like John, I was also like I said, what should be the level of education of a Nigerian, and at what age should that person attain it? We should all come together to discuss that. The minister shouldn't use his own initiative, discretion to decide it. Frankly speaking.
Very, very true. John, I'd love to get to you now. You can hear me, John.
I can hear you.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, so let's get to this particular issue here. The world is a global village. So what we are going through is not peculiar to us. Particularly, let's go to Canada, for example, because I'm reading from the Canada education website here, and it's stated categorically that primary or elementary school education is generally for kids from the ages of 5 to 12. That's in Canada. And also, secondary or high school education is for kids from the ages of 12 to 18 years. We're talking about a developed economy here. So why do you think for us as a developing country, why should we want to go differently when people who understand this better are stating the fact that kids should start from school 5 to 12 and 12 to 18?
Do you have snow in Nigeria?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Do you have snow? Do you have snow in Nigeria? I'm asking you.
Okay, no, we don't.
No. Good. So it means that the place of nature and nurture in the upbringing of a child matters so much. And so it means that weather condition of an environment can affect the growth of a child. So never you, please, for God's sake, never you compare Nigeria and Canada in any sphere. We are not equal. Okay? When it comes to issues like this, we bring countries. But when you talk about minimum wage, you don't compare Nigeria and Canada. That's the minimum wage. All right? So let's leave that comparison on one side. We are Nigerians, we are Africans, we are black people. It means that our topography and our nature, our nurture is quite different. And so we should stop this habit of importing things from Canada where there is snow to Nigeria where there is no snow. Do you understand? It's not all their policies that work in there can work for us. So it means that we need to look inward, sit down around a round table and look at what can we do. So your matter now is like, because in Canada, they wear winter jacket. You are bringing winter jacket to somebody in Kaduna or Kano where there is extreme heat. You will kill the person. So it means that in that case, such approach will not work. Now, when you look at what these children eat in Canada that affects their growth, it's not the same thing we eat in Nigeria. So in terms of nutritional benefits, we are not equal. So my brother, please, when we talk about the upbringing and raising of a child, do not compare Nigeria with Canada. We're very different. So what I think we should be going forward is simple. Number one, look, the government, that's my point. The government should agree that they have failed. And they have failed because of the failure of the government. That's why there is evolution of private institutions. In Canada, how many private schools do you have compared to Nigeria? In Lagos State alone, you have over 3,000 private schools, elementary schools. Do you understand? And even the so-called ministers and all of our political class, none of them or their kids attend these public schools. So it means that they're just bringing out policies for bringing out policy's sake. The question I want to ask again on the final note is this. How much is a dollar 40 years ago? How much is a dollar now? What are the realities on ground 40 years ago? What is it now? 40 years ago, do you have the advent of the internet? We have it now. So it means that the rate at which people access information 40 years ago is not the way it is now. Now there's AI. So it shows that even the kids that we're giving them to are advanced kids. And so you cannot use the old ways of doing things to adapt to these new kids. And that's why I said to you, when you want to bring up leaders that are thoughtful, that have foresighted, bring up leaders that are exposed, not just mediocre, because this is just another show of shame.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Now, wrapping up with you, Soweto, can we get your partition? But I want you to answer this question. Can you tell us the side effect and the negative effect this particular policy, if they should start practicing it, would have on the Nigerian educational system and the Nigerian citizens in question?
We will be cutting short, if not destroying the lives of thousands of young people who are at the verge of entering our universities, who are exceptionally brilliant, who have done nothing wrong in terms of how their educational progress has been over the past few years. We will be destroying them, we will be punishing them for something they have not done, that they didn't have any responsibility for. The responsibility for whatever has happened with regards to the destruction in the education sector lies with the proprietors of private schools who do not follow the normal standards. It lies with the regulators, maybe the minister himself. who do not bother to regulate these schools. So that I think what we need to do here is to say that even if you say this policy is right, the implementation is completely wrong. We have to ask that the minister should go over, to looking at how to best implement this. And our recommendation would be that you have to start from the foundation. You have to ensure that the standards for education right from primary schools are kept right there at those areas, ensuring that 6334 is followed, and not a situation whereby some schools would have double promotion, triple promotion, but you are going to overlook all of this. But at the last minute, when a product of that system who has done nothing wrong now wishes to advance, that is when you then say they cannot do it. That is not going to be acceptable. And if you allow the minister to do this, we will be cutting short, if not destroying the lives of the thousands of our children. That's not good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Soweto. Now let's get to parting shot, Cyril Abako.
Well, what I would say is, first, I second the points that my co-panelists have made, and secondly, the minister should go. Importantly, Nigerian parents, pressure groups like Mr. Soweto's group and group should apply pressure on the minister. Because if this policy went through the next 5 years, you hear that unemployment rate has gone down because few people will now be graduating from schools and they tell that they fix the economy. And then added to the fact that unwanted pregnancies, children going wayward, and then the literacy level will also be on the rise. So this policy doesn't really do us any good in any way. If they doubt it, the government should commission a fresh survey of Nigerian education and see what age we should adopt using John's method of our own nature, our own nurture and everything that we have. Until that is done, this policy should be suspended.
Okay.
Very, very true. I would love to say thank you, a very big thank you to Hassan Soweto for being part of our show today. John Akerele, thank you so very much for giving us your time. We truly do appreciate it. Thank you. Cyril Abako.
Yes, before you go to trading matters.
Okay. Yes, of course. So Cyril, thank you so very much for being part of our show today. So that's just the size of our package today. But of course, we'll be right back with trending matters still and right here on Enterprise Television. Please don't go anywhere.
Yeah.